Hello everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations, and you're with Simon today. And we're doing a little bit of a live stream here, talking about the summer solstice, and it's a really good opportunity to talk about astrology and talk about the dynamics that are taking place in our world today, to get into the vibe of what's actually going on. And there's also a little bit of a message here, or a little bit of sharing that I want to do as well, that has a slightly deeper tone to it, maybe a little bit more sobering tone to it. I also want to talk about things like the Neptune that has just gone retrograde, the upcoming Mars retrograde, and current events in the world at the moment that are really influencing and impacting us at a deeper level. So I'm really excited to be sharing the space with you today, and I hope that in some way, shape, or form I can support the way that you're processing the nature of our multidimensionality. So what do I mean by multidimensionality? I mean the sense that our existence, our lives that we have here on Earth has more layers to it than what we would perceive when we're growing up and when we're in our day-to-day existence. Okay, there's so many more layers to it that are non-physical, and yet the deeper we go into space or into ourselves, the less the physical essence becomes, but they're all connected, they're all intimately connected. So part of what I want to do today is really thread that interconnectedness together into the physical, which I know that all of you watching my stream and watching the YouTube and following the work that we do kind of gives us, or gives you, a knowing that this is what this channel is about. Okay, so what are we going to start with first? I wrote down some notes. Neptune retrograde. Before I maybe jump into Neptune retrograde, the chart that you're looking at the moment is the summer solstice chart. So for everybody, I think the moon was actually at 12 degrees, not 16. So for everybody, happy summer solstice here and in the northern hemisphere. And for those of you that are in Australia in the southern hemisphere, this is your winter solstice, right? Because it's winter there for you right now. So we're going to be talking about that, and it looks very juicy. It looks very intense, and it is. It's a really, really intense chart. Lots and lots of sort of karmic things playing out for us, and it's definitely a time frame right now in which there's a lot of tension, a lot of energy shifting and moving around. So we're going to jump into that. Neptune retrograde. Let's talk a little bit about Neptune retrograde, right? Whenever Neptune goes retrograde, the context of our existence when Neptune goes retrograde. So let me start here with a better way to approach this. Whenever a planet goes retrograde, just as it's about to go retrograde, right, there is going to be a very deep stress associated with the first, I would say, how do I put this across? It's like, as the planetary energy is about to turn retrograde, there's stress associated with it. There's this tension built up that must be released. And for all of us, Neptune represents the way that we have idealized something or found meaning in something or associated with something that has in some way, shape, or form been maybe more of a projection of what we've idealized versus what might actually be there. So when Neptune goes retrograde, we have this experience of buildup of confusion and I don't know, just a sense of, it's just confusion, it's psychic tension. And when Neptune goes retrograde, there's the bubble bursts, and we kind of release a lot of again, just this disillusioned state. But it's not a negative disillusionment in the sense that, oh wow, slapped in the face. It's more along the lines of like clarity appears, and in that clarity you recognize where the attachment to the idealization was occurring. And for all of us over the last 2 days, that happened, right? And as it leads up to the retrograde, we would tend to get more sensitive to what that could be, and then as the planetary energy turns retrograde, it releases. And we are left with that perfume stain or perfume smell of realization. And so as the planet then experiences its retrograde motion, so in Neptune's case, it will be for the next 5 months, we'll begin to notice how we will no longer give energy or no longer be attached to the idealization of what it was that we originally had this idealization to. And by doing that, over the period of the 5 months, the decay of that inspiration, of that meaning exists. And so you'll just notice it, or just, just fade out of your life, as an example. And it once was a whisper of eternity and mysticism and mystical meaning, and now simply is just something that that's what it was, and it kind of disappears. So where does Neptune sit in your chart? And how has it revealed to you something about your own idealization that, or your own meaning that now you've become aware of was really just something random, or just it's lost its meaning, basically? I think that it goes deeper than that within the context of, this current astrological chart that you're looking at right now. But I think I'll kind of tune into that as I go with the actual chart and explain some of the other angles that are taking place. Mars is also going to go retrograde. If I'm not mistaken, it is happening on the somebody tell me, the 24th or the 26th. Now, this is hilarious, astrologer, and I'm saying, when does Mars go retrograde? And I'm asking you, it's simply just that it's lost my mind. So Mars is going to go retrograde 25th of June, if I'm not mistaken. And the similar thing's going to happen, where the energy of what we use to initiate life direction, the energy that gives us the momentum to action things, is going to say, I'm also going on holiday. And what I find really hilarious about this, actually, in a cosmic kind of joke way, is that when Neptune goes retrograde and Mars is retrograde at the same time, the meaning that we give to things, the inspiration, the flow of what moves us in a direction, and the energy that actually allows us to move in that direction, are all going on holiday. And so I personally think that for most of us, as much as we think we're going to get things done over the next 3 to 4 months with Mars going retrograde and then moving over a shadow period, I think we're going to, the 26th of June, exactly. Thanks very much, Renee. So when this energy goes retrograde, this Mars goes retrograde, it's literally going to kind of put us in the space of not necessarily a negative paralysis, but more along the lines of like sitting still. And the stillness that we want to allow to move through us and allow to be cultivated during this period of time, I think has a very profound impact on what will begin to occur for us at the later stages of this year, right? Particularly, I think from around about the middle of September, October onwards, when Mars eventually reaches the same point that it's at right now. And we will probably take whatever direction we are at right now and where we're facing, and we're going to continue along that path in September, October. The only difference here is that the idealization and the way that we want to initiate that or action that plan might have a different meaning to it. And so I think between now and that time, towards the end of September, it's going to be a real reflection and reorientation period. And if I'm not mistaken as well, there's also going to be eclipses taking place between now and then. So there's definitely some change that's taking place for us with this Mars retrograde, with this Neptune retrograde. And I also think that the context of the retrograde itself, as well as these other astrological cycles that will be taking place, like for instance the solar eclipses and lunar eclipses, that we will reorientate. Basically, it's a reorientation. It's a new way of approaching something with a new sense of inspiration, a new dialogue with ourselves. And I think for all of us, we would really get to see how that plays out at the end. And I know that when I was looking at transits going ahead and timings of certain things, that seemed to be a very influential period. Okay. So, and you know, at the end of the day, there's loads and loads of material on the internet available in terms of the Mars retrograde meaning, everybody's interpretation. Mars will go back over the south node, which is in Aquarius. It will go back over into the constellation Capricorn. And at the end of the day, this is what I think is going to be the context of what we will reorientate towards. And it really is about stillness. I really do think that. I think it's like, exactly, do nothing and everything, and it all gets done. I mean, this is pretty much what I consider this whole entire time period to be. There's just going to be so much surrender into a path that will unfold for us versus us trying to assert what we think the path needs to be, in that sense. And so we'll actually land up where we need to be without having to do half the amount of work. And that's what I see. So I'm super curious to see how you observe that within your life or sense that. And, you know, maybe at the end of when we do a Mars going direct video later on, we'll interact with everybody and say, like, does that happen? Has that happened to you? Okay. So what else is there? You know, Renee's talking about, she's really, really worried about what the chart and the eclipses mean for the United States, which apparently has a death wish. And this is a really, really interesting thing. Here's my personal thoughts of this subject, okay? If you observe the chart at the moment, okay, now I'm going to do this very, very slowly because I really, really want to get my point across in a very profound way and still at the same time not be too over complex. So this is something that I really want to share with you. The context of Pluto and Saturn in the chart at the moment, okay, is a deeply, deeply significant thing when it comes to what is occurring for you in your personal life around the ups and downs of emotional, in a sense, waves that you're experiencing, right? So some days you're really sort of upbeat and you feel free, and then there's other days where you're like really, really down and the energy's really dense and it's tough, and there doesn't seem to be a consistency around the nature of how the emotional frequency is actually operating for us. And for some of us, I say this, for a lot of us, when we look at the world in the current state right now, there's a tremendous amount of what we consider to be chaos. It feels like chaos. It feels like deep uncertainty. It feels like a sense of, are we protected? Are we safe? Do we feel as if the path of our humanity is on a road where we can consider our life and our lives and the sort of, you know, the trajectory that we're on to be governed and fathered in a way where us as children can relate with security, can relate with openness, can relate with a capacity to feel as if there is there's a guiding force that is allowing us to go, okay, guys, let's just relax here for a moment. There's a lot of upheaval taking place, but it's not going to be catastrophic in the context of what we might fear, even though it definitely feels like that and looks like that. And there is a lot of reason at the moment to psychically sense, feel, and embrace, or not embrace, but what's the word, envelop these impressions of chaos, uncertainty, and so on and so forth, right? So this Pluto and Saturn context is really, really what, in my opinion, the deep bandwidth that is shaking this stuff up and bringing it up to the surface for us, okay? Why? Because the Capricorn archetype, okay, has, if you have a look at the natural zodiac right now, you can see that directly in opposition to Capricorn is the archetype of Cancer, okay? Now, for any of you that are aware of your own astrology charts and to a certain degree have a sense of awareness about how this plays out for you in your life, if you have a lot of Capricorn in your chart, you'll notice that your behavior patterns within your life is about wanting to assert control or influence on your environment in order to, in a sense, move away from a fear of chaos, a fear of emotional buoyancy, this up and downness, emotions being like this and then up and down. It's like, no, let's keep everything organized. Let's keep everything in a box, because what exists outside that box is too uncertain. It's too uncomfortable. And I like things to be practical. I don't like things to be all over the place. I like organization because it keeps me calm. There's a stillness associated with it, right? The Capricorn archetype within, as an archetype, is the boundaries that we have in consciousness. So think of consciousness as water. Think of the boundaries being the glass that allows the water to be defined in the form that it's in. Okay? So the same thing happens for us. As a human being, we need a sense of identity in order for us to feel as if we not only exist, but that there is a relationship to something that allows us to, in a sense, objectify, as I talk about, but also the capacity to know what we like and what we don't like, and a sense of where is the edge of something. So each of us as human beings have a set of personal boundaries, and these personal boundaries are developed in our psychology and our sense of ego. And it's this ego identity that allows us to relate to this vast open space that is the universe. Okay? So when we look at the Capricorn archetype, and then there is planetary energies that are moving through that, especially when it's Pluto, okay, we're going to have disturbance, change, reshaping, influence, and just use those words, around our personal sense of definition that we as human beings relate to, that ultimately gives us a sense of security, right? Imagine if you were walking around and you felt, or you couldn't identify with yourself, right? It can be very unnerving. And for somebody that has Pluto in the 12th house, or somebody that has Saturn in the 12th house, or Saturn in Pisces, or Saturn oppose Neptune or square Neptune, a part of you feels like being able to identify yourself can be very, very difficult, because the boundaries in the Neptunian realm are dissolving, because everything's returning to the source that is boundarylessness. So the identity that holds us and binds us together, that we relate to, is held within the context of Cancer Capricorn, right? So gender roles, this is an identity, gender, identity, role. So the man does this, the woman does that. If you notice that during Pluto's transit through Capricorn, a deep, deep, deep unconscious emotional sort of wave arose into the collective consciousness that began to form different groups of people that are choosing to either identify their children as genderless in the sense it's like they can be whatever they want. If they want to be female right now, they can. If they want to be male, they can. Or that people are a lot more open to the idea of gender transgender behavior. Either way, and even when you look at, like, for instance, those of you that are born 1973 to 1983, 84, a lot of you will come out into the world and say, you know what, I'm really not interested in living this kind of contextual life where the gender role is what I'm supposed to fit into. The expectation of how I must be grown into or perceived into is not something I want. So I'm going to break out of that tradition. I'm going to break out of that mold that defines me a specific way, because I'm more than that. Okay? Think about the energetic wave of coming through the human being. Remember, guys, we are an organism, and this organism is simply part of the ecosystem that is life on Earth. And so the energetic essence that is life just simply moves through us. And the context and the themes are held within the stories that the archetypes of the cosmos have for us. So when we go into that state and we identify ourselves with this larger creative force that is beyond gender roles, you can see how easy it is to have a fracturing ego or an identity be a part of your experience of awakening. All you have to do is go back to 2014 when Jupiter was transiting through Cancer, squaring the nodes in opposition to Pluto, and squaring Uranus in that sense. And Mars was in Libra at that stage, and it was the great cardinal square that was taking place. That was a wave of energetic vibration that was moving through our form, the housing system, the form, and it was literally shattering the ego identity attachment that we have as human beings. And it was opening us up into what? Into the context of beyond what we identify. We're opening up into something that is beyond what we identify. So what has this got to do with this chart? What has this got to do with the original context of the conversation, which was what is currently occurring right now in the world, and more specifically, if we want to draw attention to the States, because Pluto is having, America's having their own Pluto return. Their Pluto's in Capricorn. What are we looking at? We're looking at the context of the emotional identity and ego structure that was once crystallized and formed a long time ago. The paradigm of thinking has changed. The paradigm of thinking is changed because the old container can no longer, the old boundaries, the boundaries are outdated. And so Pluto's transit through Capricorn is awakening and fracturing and opening up. And naturally speaking, when you have a psyche that is experiencing holes being punctured through the ego structure that is a defense mechanism towards that allows you to feel safe relative to this cosmos, you can easily see how paranoia, insanity, madness, crazy, uncertainty, feeling lost, not knowing what's going on, when is it going to end? All of these emotions begin to envelop an osmosis with us because the context and the container that once kept us safe and that we identified with, that we never questioned because we don't pay attention to these things, becomes rattled. And here we're sitting going, okay, firstly, only a few people have really prepared us for this up until the point that it was happening. And then all of a sudden an explosion of every single person that could channel information through about how to process what's going on right now landed up on YouTube, and now we are subscribing to all these people, listening to the different perspectives to allow us to make sense of the insanity that's occurring so we can feel safe, right? 2, the process in which our awakening experience is happening is simply us being exposed to another dimension of space that has never been explored before relative to our past security patterns, and so we feel uncomfortable. We feel uncertain. It is a natural function within the limbic system and the reptilian brain to respond to these things with fear. And yet, ironically, the very thing that's actually being opened up for us is the capacity to transcend the limitation of the animal body and access the multidimensionality, sixth sense awareness that is also encoded and part of our experience that means to be human. So duality forms into singularity, and singularity points inward, and all of a sudden we begin to see the timelessness within ourselves. We begin to reshape and re-understand and reorientate to a space within inside of ourselves that is heart-centered. And the heart-centeredness that you can go onto the internet and discover every single person and their little dog and their small little cat telling you that heart-centeredness does not work on the same vibration and the frequency as the mind. It simply doesn't. So the heart-centeredness is operating through a form that it doesn't acknowledge the calendar and the time. Okay. It has a context, it has its own vibrational field. It's about attraction. And so for most of us right now, part of this shift within our awareness, this fracturing and this opening up and this dissolving of the barriers that is leaking out, all the unresolved emotional material that has been repressed and suppressed for the last whoever long knows, is also present for us. And so the journey from the place of duality into singularity must include the purging of separation. And this is why the idea of heart-centeredness and one love and unified consciousness and all of this type of blah has come about, because in a sense, if you strip away the language, it is just simply the recognition that unification and unity is the way or the path home. Pluto's polarity point, Cancer. Where is your home? And the difference here is that when Pluto was there in Capricorn originally, the context of home was in that time frame. Whereas today, the context of home for a lot of us is the transition from seeing and perceiving an outer authority as where we give our sense of self to. It is now moving into your own inner space. And all of a sudden you run on a different time code to the world, and you start to notice within yourself that you don't want to do the things that are expected of you, as an example, because you might not feel at that time that that is where you want to be, because where you are in yourself is at a different space to everybody else. The context of this Pluto and Saturn energy that will eventually have Jupiter catch up to it in the next 2.5 years is that we are heading to a point in which the whole entire context of outer authority and self-identity is going to completely radically change. And we right now are that wave of energetic vibration that is riding this change subtly until eventually it's going to tip over, and then it will begin to, collapse. We are in a collapsing society, Capricorn society, structures, rules, regulations. And as the framework of that is decaying, because everybody is withdrawing their own sense of what they consider to be important, Uranus and Taurus, the values, that the values of us are changing so much, so radically. And all you have to do is just go onto the internet and observe the millions of YouTube channels that are out there. What are people doing? They're creating their own space, and they're talking about their own lives. And most people that would have to go and get a job and work for the external authority no longer looks at that and goes, that's what I want to do. 90% of the people are like, well, if I've got a creative gift and I like being creative, why don't I just start a YouTube channel and start sharing my space? As an example. Look at how many people have just popped out of nowhere and said, okay, well, I've got this talent, I've got this talent, I've got this talent, and it's their own unique space, just as I'm doing right now. It's no difference. This is a reflection of that vibration, and it is only the beginning. So when you look at the outside world and you see the chaos, you see the crumbling things, do what Neo does in the first Matrix film right at the end. He takes off the glasses and sees the energetic vibration, and that's where you see the collapse. That's where you see the decay. That's where you see the change. We don't see it because we're in it. And because we're in it, we're not going to go, oh my God, we are living in one of the most intense and incredible times of human experience, because of the fact that the whole fabric of what we constitute existence and civilization to be is literally reshaping in front of us. So when you look at things like, for instance, the actions of Trump and that behavior, and I hate to use that because at the end of the day, it's far more complex than just one person. But the context of the separation from mother and child, or families and child, and the context of how it is evoking emotion in us exists in the Capricorn archetype, the Pluto archetype, the South Node in Aquarius, right? Look at the chart over here at the moment, okay? Chiron in Aries, square the sun. The solar eclipse right now, or sorry, not solar eclipse, the summer solstice is sitting where the sun is squaring Chiron in Aries at 2 degrees. Now, for most of us, we have a very sort of internet-based understanding of Chiron through Aries. But I would like to imprint that one of the things that is associated with the Chiron's transit through Aries is a deep, deep awakening. Why do I talk about awakening? Because whenever you try to understand Chiron in the chart, please look at Uranus and Saturn. Because when we look at astrology, and I'm going on my own soapbox right now, when we look at astrology, we look at a bunch of symbols on a chart and we go, okay, Saturn means this. And we're still disconnected from the soul. We're still disconnected from the human experience. Okay? So Uranus in the chart represents a cycle of looking beyond what we perceive to be existence and says, break out of that shell. Break out of that shell. Change the pattern. Change the pattern. Look out. Look more. Use the telescope. Observe life beyond the realms of your own box. Saturn is saying, right now, this is your current emotional growth. And when you take Chiron, Chiron helps us develop and like bond the connection between our emotional growth of physical form, Saturn, i.e. the crystallization of our emotional experiences, relative to constant impulses of awakening that are coming from Uranus. Chiron is bonding it together, but it is also recognizing and revealing to us deep memory patterns. Uranus correlates to the deep memory of our human race. Within our cellular memory, Uranus reminds us of all of the imprinting that has occurred. Even that's too abstract to grasp. So when you have Chiron here at 1 degrees, 2 degrees Aries, we're dealing with what? We're dealing with lifetimes in which humanity has gone to war, has created a world of assertion and dominance, and wants to conquer. And what happens when we create those realities? Number one, majority of the men, right, masculine form, goes into battle. The parent separates from the family. The relationship between the masculine principle separating from its family is a deep distortion that is all contained within every single one of you that is a man right now. In your hearts, you can't deny it. In your heart somewhere, there is a strong pain of remembrance in which your own separation from your mother, your own separation from the feminine energy deeply burns within your heart. The yearning to return to that space of safety, that space of nurture and softness and compassion and empathy is at the core of your existence. And we've shut it down because we've been taught to shut it down, because the principles of what natural is has been so heavily distorted through this experience that we have lost touch with that need. And yet fundamentally it exists within us. We just materialize it in different ways, right? So the feminine form sits with the abandonment of what it naturally needs. The feminine wants the masculine to complete it, not because it is not complete, but because this is a natural process within this cosmos. It's a principle here. And so the yearning for completion is not there, and so abandonment exists. And so all of the traumas and the defense mechanisms come around that process, and rejection is the key in the masculine form, and the need for attraction and then not being seen or not being recognized within the feminine form. Those realities of war and conquering and creating a world of dominance, and every single day at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to drop my kid off at the daycare center, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to do what I need to do, and then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to pick up my child at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Those were the days in the past. Some of the world right now still lives in that context. That kid does not know that it's being separated from its parents. Its natural function, a child's natural function, biologically encoded for the first at least 7 years of its life, needs to be reinforced in its attachment that this is a safe place. How many of you can honestly say that you had that? Now, this has nothing to do with your parents and their choices and so on and so forth, because we are part of something bigger than that. We are part of a global imprinting. That Chiron in Aries sits at 2 degrees squaring the sun sign, and it connects over here, is revealing to us the ramifications and effects of these choices and definitions and times in which we have existed within. So the first thing that we want to do with Neptune trining Jupiter in Scorpio is allow compassion to ourselves. Compassion for the realization that that is what we have been doing in the human condition. That a lot of the things that we're seeing right now is Pluto bringing it to the surface and saying, hey, humanity, this is what's happened during your separation. It's nothing personal, but here's the way. This is what's going to awaken you. This is what's going to shock you into realization that separation is deeply hurtful to you. And you don't want that anymore because your natural state is return back to the source, return back to unification. So when you see this event that's taking place right now in the States with regards to the separation of the parents from their children, and honestly recognize your emotional relationship to it, regardless of your mental conditioning, not what your beliefs are and your ideologies and what you think is right and wrong, just what you feel. Because in the feeling process, it cannot be like influenced by duality. When I'm angry and you're angry, we show the same face. Have you ever seen a person that's been angry and been like, hey, I'm angry, I'm so fantastic? No. Right. So emotion cannot be split into two. It is not dualistic. It is singular. So when you relate to that space, what does it awaken in you? And then what does that emotion bring to the surface that allows you to see what must be transmuted or processed out? So each event that is occurring right now is a trigger for it to come to the surface, Pluto in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn, for us to emotionally and in a sense heal that separation. Now that is not easy. You just have to go onto the internet right now and observe the amount of chaos that is swirling around it, the egos that are drowning in their own pain and suffering. We're all at this point in time sitting in a place and we're going like, oh my God, this boat that we're in is friggin' chaotic, and how are we going to deal with this? We're just freaking out. You're just freaking out. So what do you do? What do we do? Breathe. Breathe. Just the breath. Come back to the simplicity that is existence at the moment. Just breathe. Calm your electrical system down. I'm the first person to have to do that. Right? We need to come back down to our own space, because the moment that we take our awareness and we collect up to the collective consciousness field and we feel that chaos, it's just, we've got to come back to our own space. Saturn in Capricorn, trining Uranus. Just come back to our groundedness, come back to our groundedness, come back to our groundedness, come back to ourselves, come back to the moment. Just breathe, just breathe. Remember your own healing. Remember your own space. Remember your own story. Connect back to your own story. All of this that is occurring for us right now is not part of the story, but it is simply a manifestation of where we have been. It is all coming up for us to be released and purged out. So the thing that you can do to contribute to the story is to get into the space that is in the center of your chest, the heart-centeredness over there, right, where the non-duality exists, and feel into what you consider contribution to be. Feel into where the ego is dissolved into a space of unification. And it's not a new age spiritual concept of allowing what's the word, like premature, when we want to forgive somebody, basically it's just like compassion. It's like, oh, Trump doesn't know what he's doing, or that person doesn't know what he's doing. It's a realization that at the end of the day, obviously this is evoking a big emotion. And currently on the internet right now, Jen was sharing with me, it was super cool. There was an organization that had been setting up certain fundraising, set up a fundraiser to support and help children and families that have been through traumas. And with the most recent activities of parents and children being separated, and the realization that what we've defined, Saturn, Capricorn, 10th house boundaries, where we define things in our lives, we have cut ourselves off from our humanity. Every single person that exists on this plane of this earth right now has a belly button, because we all came from the same place. Meaning that we're all human. The conditioning and the shaping and the distortions and the imprinting and the emotional disconfiguration is a representation of how we have chosen to govern ourselves, and how we have allowed ourselves to be a part of that governance through unconsciousness, and how we can now actively choose to recognize the part that we've played in this story and ask ourselves, where does our integrity lie? Where does the truth for us lie in each moment? The key here with the story right now, with the sun squaring Chiron, is that we are so sensitive to the traumas of separation. We are so sensitive to the traumas that allow us to see that the natural law that exists within us as a human race has been violated. The abuse, Jupiter in Scorpio, around the way that we've defined ourselves and the separation that's occurred, is up for healing, and we can only know that it is needing to be healed because it's a sore point. Have you ever in your entire life just taken a plaster? Now, most of us might have done it just for doing this, but understand what I mean. Have you ever taken a plaster or gone to the ER and said, hey, by the way, my arm is completely okay, but I'd like you to give me a certain amount of medication and possibly do an examination because nothing's there, but I need to attend to this wound, right? You've never put a plaster over a piece of skin or a part of your body that is completely fine. You've never done that. Why? Because your attention to that area has never ever been brought there because there's nothing wrong with it. So the only time that we know that we need to address, now think about it, where else do we address a wound? In a hospital. What are we addressing in the hospital? We're addressing a wound, we're addressing a sensitivity, we're addressing something that has hurt us. So there is no difference between the collective psyche's wound that we are experiencing right now with Pluto through Capricorn and what is Neptune in Pisces doing. It's like, hey, we have to address these wounds. Mars on top of the South Node in Aquarius, fracturing, separation, trauma, our ability to see where we have separated ourselves. You know that the South Node of Neptune sits at 9 degrees Aquarius. Now, for any of you that don't know what I mean by this, the South Node of Neptune is the energy, is the background frequency for the energy that influences Neptune, right? Did you know that? That every single planet is in its present state, got a circle around it. And then that planet has had a trajectory. And part of that trajectory is something of the past, right? It's something that's been moving. Meaning that the South Node of every single planet holds the context of whatever has been in existence right now. Do you understand what I mean by this, right? So, like, I don't know how else to explain this in a way that can make it even more clear, but wherever the South Node of a planet's energy sits, we can be 100% aware and understanding that that energy has been influencing and shaping the context of what we've been establishing over every single moment of our lives. Now, when we're dealing with the South Node of Neptune, we're dealing with the context of what humanity defines as its spirituality. And that South Node sits at 9 degrees Aquarius, which means that humanity has been finding love and direction through its individuation process. But as Pluto in Capricorn and Saturn in Capricorn and the sort of onset of the masculine principle of domination and control, we needed to explore that. We needed to explore the fact that the masculine principle wants to assert itself, maybe because it needed to do it in order for us to survive. Who knows? But we've reached the end point. It's like, okay, we've got to the end point now, and now we need to turn back or turn in a different direction and apply other strategies or other ways of processing life. It has reached its expiry date. And what we are experiencing on the planet is the realization that an expiry date is here. And how that's showing up is, hey, by the way, we've got a wound and we need to address it. So we're addressing it. And how are we addressing it? We're addressing it through the awakening of the heart. The realization that the atrocities that we've seen are no longer supportive of human existence. And we are sensitive to that. And so therefore we're in rage. Now you must remember that how many people are on the planet experiencing this energy moving through us? A tremendous amount. So the context of this energetic wave is a lot bigger than just simply me walking around going, you know what, wow, this is a big event. Because there are hundreds of thousands of people that are thinking the same thing. And when you put that electrical charge together, you can see why it is such a big deal for us right now. So this event, these events that are happening for us right now are happening because we need to go, oh my God, this is where we need to take Band-Aid and we need to start addressing the wounds that we carry. And when we address these wounds, we give ourselves the capacity to heal the separation. become sensitive and learn over time. It just is part of our collective memory. It's a very, very deep way to look at it. But it is not a way to say it's not okay. Like, for instance, when we look at what's occurring for us right now, let's say in America, and most of you that are watching this stream are from the States, and you're seeing this and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It doesn't mean that that's okay. It doesn't mean that, oh, it's this thing that Simon's talking about, and so therefore it's okay that Trump's doing that, or the administration's doing that, or this is occurring. It's not. That's the point. The point is that our emotional ego attachment to what we think is happening that's not okay is the very thing that's saying there's a wound here that we need to address. I'm just bringing the capacity to process this at a deeper level so that we can allow ourselves to move into the state of what we are achieving. And it's going to happen naturally, so we don't even need to try again. It's not even about like, okay, now I'm going to go do this. Just whenever you feel moved to do something, do it. And I was talking about this community, this place. I can't remember the name straight away. Maybe Jen could post it in the chat. It was called, I can't actually pronounce, I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah, I can't pronounce it. Maybe Jen can post it in the chat, or I'll post it in the comments below. But anyway, this community is, they basically an organization that helps people process the traumas and the separations. And they were only dealing with one family at a time. And they were doing a fundraiser where they were getting like $800, $2,000. And with this most recent event that's taken place in the States with the separation of the children and the detention, they have reached just over, if I'm not mistaken, 20 million. 20 million people they've received this in donations and funds in order to fund their capacity to then go and actually treat this. This is so phenomenal. Because this is what is this is what's being birthed out of these experiences. These catastrophic traumas that we're experiencing is birthing the North Node in Leo there, and Venus in Leo. Our capacity to wake up to and recognize the calling for our humanity to be restored. South Node in Aquarius. Our humanity being restored, and therefore creating a new direction, creating new values, creating new space for us, right? We're healing this process, but the healing comes from our reaction to the trauma. Just as, okay, I've cut myself, I need to address this. See this point? People are not okay right now. How is your relationships doing? Mars in opposition to Venus. You know, I talked about this process of community. We're all with this moon, the sun in opposition to Saturn, Venus in opposition to Mars, Pluto in opposition to Mercury, Uranus squaring the nodes. There's Uranus squaring the North Node and the South Node, Jupiter squaring the South Node and the North Node, the moon squaring Mercury, the moon squaring Pluto. This is the summer solstice chart. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's wonderful. What is the picture at the background that I specifically used? Okay, I'm gonna see. No, I can't actually remove the chart. But can you see the people in the background over there? It's a community. Everybody's united, and there's the circle of the sun. Right? Can you see it over there? Right. This is what this chart's potential is about. We're being reunited. We're being reunited in a place that is from the heart. We're being reunited in the heart because the separation has moved us so far apart from each other that we've lost sight of our own humanity. And it doesn't mean that you are guilty for it, and it doesn't mean that you have to walk around shame. It simply means that we are at a point in which the returning force for us is to find our community. And that community can only be found when you find yourself. And this is what this is about. It's about finding yourself. Your whole entire story should be about this path of finding yourself, because in finding yourself, you will be able to find your community. And when you're finding your community, you will find the place that will provide you with what you want to contribute as your feeling of purpose and destiny. This is the process. We're being cultivated. We're not being cultivated. There is no force that's doing that. The energy is pushing us and forcing us and moving us to say that we have a collective choice. This choice can either be more separation, more anger, more duality, more fighting, or it can step us back into a space and realize that the whole time, the aggression, the pain, the suffering, the need for war is simply our own shadow emerging for us to see and recognize and accept as what it has been for us. This is where we've been. And now we can begin to make choices for ourselves, step by step, one foot in front of the other, in a way where we're not only inspired by our own self and that reuniting, but the inspiration for others. The inspiration to unite that process. And it's with us. It's there. It's never like it's not something we have to go and find. It's just something that we have to cultivate and nurture. Cultivating and nurture. What do you do with a child that's 2 months old, that's 1 month old? You just go, oh, okay, you're self-sufficient. No, it's the reason as to why we're so sensitive to the unnaturalness of a mother being separated from the child, because we know instinctually at a biological level that the survival of the child is dependent on the parent. So therefore, we know that whatever is soft, new, and is important to our new direction is about nurturing it. And you can contribute to that even if you don't have any money, even if you don't have anything that you consider, that the world considers to be valuable. The thing that you can do to contribute is to your own garden, is to tend to your own garden. And when you begin to do that and begin to allow yourself to tend to that own garden, the magic of your own reuniting with your own self will naturally occur. And the more that you can do that, the more the same effect will happen for all of us, just as it happens when some event occurs in the world and we go, oh my God, this is crazy. Because collectively, when everybody says, oh my God, this is crazy, you can see the vibration, you can hear the vibration. There's no difference between sitting at a football stadium, literally, as this World Cup is happening in Russia. You can sit at a stadium and have one person, a whole entire country shout for its country saying, yay, let's do this, let's do this. The magnitude of that inspiration affects those players. So there's no difference between you coming back to your own space, allowing yourself to cultivate and nurture your own garden. And then for everybody to do that, it will have the same effect. It's just its polarity. The civilization is crumbling because the meaning and the essence of it no longer is there. Do not stand in fear. Do not stand in panic. That is the process. That is the process. And when this is our own fears are literally coming to the surface and we are needing to process through it. And honestly, at the end of the day, I do this specifically to encourage you to feel like it's okay. The world does not look okay. The decaying experience is not okay. The shadow is dark and dangerous, and the dragon's head is there breathing to us right now. But in that darkness will awaken something in you so profound that when that darkness disappears into our collective memory and we stand at the gates of a new era, which is occurring for us right now, you will start to understand that this period right now was one of the most intense periods of human existence because it is a transition. And that transition comes with a tremendous amount of what the fuck is going on? That, I feel, is where I end with this conversation today, everybody. I really hope that on some level you got something out of this sharing, out of this attention that I gave to this over here. If you felt like this was moving to you, please share with me in the comments. I really love to hear what you have to say. I love the engagement. Tell me what's going on in your own personal life regarding your relationship dynamics. Are you feeling it? What experiences have you happened that you could share within the community that other people could see inspirational, that could feed off, as an example? Everybody that reads the comments gets something out of it. You know that because when you've read comments on YouTube, on Facebook, there's something or somebody says that changes your own perception of something. So I encourage you to participate for your own sake and for everybody else's sake, as everybody else is interacting with it as well. So if you feel called to do that, please do so. It would be amazing. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. I really hope that, like I said, you enjoyed this. I just wanted to let everybody know, actually, by the way, I have a platform, and I'm building a community at this point in time on Patreon, and I'm pretty much really inspired to grow and cultivate a lot of positive energy in that area. So if that's something that you feel like you would like to look out for or understand, in the comments below is a link to go and check out our Patreon, and you know, see what's available over there. If you like what we're doing over there, join our community. We would love to have people just wanting to participate in something in which you could feel at home during this time of uncertainty. Okay, just if you need that reassurance, or that chart of the day, or somebody else that mentions a comment as an example. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week within this context, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.